Okay, get this. What if I told you that you could turn a massive, growing desert green using millions of rabbits? Yeah, you heard me right. Rabbits. It sounds like something out of a fairy tale, right? But it's a totally real and honestly an incredible story of problem solving. So today, we're going to break down how one of the world's most notorious pests actually became an ecological hero in China. And this is what's so fascinating, right? It's this total paradox. On one hand, you've got Australia, where rabbits are, well, they're an absolute nightmare. We're talking a plague of over 200 million of them, causing just unbelievable ecological damage. But then you flip over to China, and suddenly they're the saviors, the heroes of the story. So how is that even possible? How can the exact same animal be a villain in one place and a hero in another? Well, that's exactly what we're going to figure out. All right, so first things first, let's meet the villain of our story. This is the Kubaki Desert in China, and it had a pretty terrifying nickname, the Sea of Death. Now, the big problem here is this process called desertification, and it's basically what it sounds like. Fertile land just dries up, gets eaten by sand, and dies. It's this relentless, creeping crisis that, honestly, feels almost impossible to stop, let alone reverse. And when I say relentless, I mean it. Before this whole thing started, the Kubaki was expanding at a mind-boggling rate. We're talking about it swallowing 500,000 acres of good land every single year. I mean, just try to picture that. It was a crisis that was completely spiraling out of control. But then, this local entrepreneur, a guy named Wang Wenbiao, he comes along, and he has what pretty much everyone thought was a totally crazy idea. He was gonna fight the desert. He was gonna fight back against the sand. Okay, so his first plan was actually pretty logical, you know? He started planting tons of willow trees. And these things are tough. Their roots can dig down like 300 feet to find water. And to keep the crazy desert winds from destroying the saplings, he built these cool checkerboard barriers out of dry bushes. I mean, it was a really solid start. But there's always a but, right? The plan hit a huge snag. See, for those willow trees to actually be valuable for things like paper or furniture, you have to constantly prune the new shoots. That's what makes the main trunk grow thick and strong. But trying to do that by hand across a massive remote desert, it was impossible. Way too hard, way too expensive. The whole project was about to fail. And this is where the story gets really interesting. With the entire project right on the brink of collapse, Wang brings in his secret weapon, the Rex rabbit. So why rabbits? I mean, it seems so random. But it wasn't just one thing. It was this brilliant 4-part system. Okay, first off, they were the perfect pruners. They just naturally ate the exact willow shoots that needed to be trimmed. Problem solved. Second, they're basically tiny, walking fertilizer factories. Their waste started enriching that useless sandy soil. Third, and this is my favorite part, they became accidental gardeners. They can't digest certain grass seeds, so they spread them everywhere in their droppings, planting new greenery all over the place. And finally, number 4, their fur is really valuable, which created a whole new way for the local people to make money. It was just this perfectly designed interlocking system. And here's the key takeaway. This wasn't just about planting trees anymore. It became this incredible, self-sustaining cycle. The ecology and the economy started working together, hand in hand. The rabbits took care of the trees held the sand down, and the whole operation generated money, which then funded even more greening. It was like a perfect loop. So, the big question is, did this whole eco-economic engine actually work? Oh yeah, the results weren't just good, they were absolutely transformative. Let's dig into how they literally turned sand into gold. Check this out. Over the course of about 30 years, they managed to turn 6,250 square kilometers of the Kubaki Desert green. That's about 1/3 of the entire desert. Just incredible. And, you know, this wasn't just a win for the environment, it was a massive win for the people living there. The project created jobs and brand new livelihoods for over 100,000 people in the area. And we're not just talking about getting by. The average income for local farmers shot up to around $9,600 a year. Think about that. People who used to have to flee the desert to survive were now actually making a good living right there. Okay, so let's circle all the way back to that first question we asked. Why was this a massive success in China, but a total disaster in Australia? The answer comes down to one single word: control. In Australia, rabbits were just let loose into the wild, an unmanaged environment, and they became an invasive nightmare. But in China, they weren't just released. They were integrated as livestock into a carefully designed, carefully managed system. That right there is the whole ballgame. But believe it or not, the story doesn't even stop there. The whole system got one last, huge upgrade, a final power-up that created this ultimate symbiotic cycle. What they do? They built a massive solar power plant, one of the biggest in the world, right on top of the land they had just saved from the desert. And here's a really cool little fact for you. The panels aren't just in boring rows. They're actually arranged in the shape of a giant galloping horse. It's so big, it earned a Guinness World Record for the largest solar panel image in the world. How awesome is that? But again, this is so much more than just a solar farm. It's an active part of the whole ecosystem. The panels create shade, right? That means less water evaporates, which lets grass grow underneath. And who takes care of mowing that grass? You guessed it, the rabbits. Plus, the panels themselves act as a windbreak, cutting wind speed in half and stopping the sand from blowing around. It's literally a farm that fights the desert while also generating tons of clean energy. It's genius. So, what can we take away from this incredible story from one desert in China? What does it mean for the rest of the world? Let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture. And you know, the reality is pretty sobering. About half the world's land is already desert, and a staggering 40% of all land on Earth is at risk of becoming desert. This isn't some small, localized issue. It's a huge global challenge. And that's exactly why this Kabuki model is getting so much attention from people all over the world. And that really leaves us with one final big thought. The lesson from Kabuki seems to be that when we get our human ingenuity to work with natural systems instead of against them, even a place called the Sea of Death can become an oasis. So it makes you wonder, right? If this incredible combination of trees, rabbits, and solar panels can actually reclaim a desert, what other impossible environmental problems could we solve if we just started thinking about our relationship with nature a little differently?